Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 181 of the Conscious Resistance Live. My name is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network. And as you can see on screen right there, we are going to be focusing on 3 stories today, 3 main stories for the next hour to hour and a half. Peter Thiel's Dialog exposed, this new alleged secret society, Bilderberg 2.0, 3.0, exposed at a deeper level than ever before. We'll talk about that. We're also going to get into the data center fight, the fight against hyperscale AI data centers, and why myself and other independent media activists and journalists are starting to organize a national day of action focused on that issue. And finally, we're going to be talking about Mexico's upcoming biometric deadline, which I've been reporting on for a year now. Allegedly, by July 1st, if Mexicans and people in Mexico with phones don't have them registered with their biometrics, which is called the biometric CURP, their phone service will be cut and only allowed emergency calls on July 1st. We're going to be tracking that story and much more tonight on the Conscious Resistance Live. So that's the stories we are going to cover tonight, guys. I really appreciate all of you for being here. As always, this is a place for you to get content, independent news information, stories that are not just the same thing being talked about everywhere in the alternative so-called independent media. Yes, you may have heard about Peter Thiel's secret society, but we're going to take a deeper dive than elsewhere. Yes, you're probably hearing about things like hyperscale data centers elsewhere, but who's actually doing something about it? And finally, I know that I'm one of the only people talking about the situation in Mexico. So I encourage you guys to stay here. If you're not subscribed to our website, theconsciousresistance.com, that is going to be the best place to always get my content. Theconsciousresistance.com. This is where I've been producing my content since 2013. And I can't tell you how annoying it is to be producing content that long and to still have people ask me, what's your website? What's your website? People, though, who only follow me through social media, so YouTube, Facebook, etc., and they never visit my website. Guys, it helps us journalists, independent creators out so much more if you drive traffic to our websites and support us directly rather than just doing so through social media platforms, big tech platforms. So I've been saying this for a decade now. Go to my page, bookmark, sign up for the email list. You'll see a pop-up. I send an email maybe once a week or a couple times, a week if there's a lot going on. But this is where you can find my investigations, documentaries, books, learn more about the philosophy of the conscious resistance, agorism, anarchism, see all my presentations that I've given, see the different topics I've researched over the years. This is truly the best place to find my content, guys. So thank you to everybody who does that. Let's not waste any time. Let's dive into our first story. We're going to be talking all about the leak of information relating to Peter Thiel and his Dialog secret, not so secret society. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. First off, as I'll show you in a moment, Dialog has been known for a couple of years now. They apparently were founded in 2006, so it's been around for 20 years, which also kind of makes me a little curious or suspicious of the timing of this release of information, like why all of a sudden. Basically, the story is that there's a hacker that did hack Dialog, which is Peter Thiel's secret society, that has hacked them and released some information. Now, that happened a couple of years ago, but now Wired Magazine is saying that they're actually being given inside information from people who were a part of it. So it says a trove of internal records from a secret society for powerful figures in U.S. politics, finance, and tech was left exposed online. Wired has confirmed naming participants in its event and revealing sensitive personal data they assured would stay private. The group is called Dialog, a private invitation-only organization co-founded in 2006 by Peter Thiel and another gentleman we'll talk about in a moment. So they get together actually a couple of times a year for these so-called off-the-record annual retreats. And they basically spent the last 2 decades being as secretive as possible. But now it's coming out into the open. So again, the first reveal was through a Swiss activist called Maya Arson Crime W. This is a woman. You can find her on Instagram and elsewhere, known for exposing the U.S. government's no-fly list. And she said that the directory came via an anonymous tip, which is also, I think, interesting. Like, did somebody want this information out? I'm not sure. But Wired independently verified the contents. A source separately, so this is separate from the leak from that hacker, told Wired that the registration list for Dialog's 2026 retreat, which names 222 people and records what the list describes as each registrant's membership status and attendee type, including active member and guest. They apparently are supposed to be meeting in August 12th to the 16th at a venue near Dublin, Ireland. We'll see if that happens now. Some of the talks they're giving include money does buy happiness, and does is in parentheses with a question mark. Bring back nuclear, navigating World War III, battlefield technologies, how's your sex life, and other talks like build a cult, moderated by the founder of the Christian networking site Pray.com, which, by the way, you may have seen, I'm pretty sure Russell Brand and others promoting this Pray.com. They have an app as well, and I'm pretty sure Peter Thiel's invested in it. And Build a Party, run by a former White House national security official. So that's just a little bit of it. They've got, a list of people's names, people who are involved in it. We're going to go through that list in just a second here. But that's kind of the first big story, is Peter Thiel's, secret society that's been secret for 20 years is now coming out into the open. And you can see it's Forbes magazine is reporting on it. They've got the list here. What we know about billionaire Peter Thiel's secret dialogue society and who's involved. And so this is coming based on the hack, but also reporting from Wired. So among those who are named by the Swiss hacker include General Alexis Grinekewicz, NATO's Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in the Trump administration, also connected to George Soros, Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, Haley Hoffman, Acting Chief of Staff for the DEA, Ted Cruz, Cory Booker, Jim Himes, Maryland's Governor Wes Moore, Colorado Governor Jared Polis, and others from Google DeepMind, former governor of the Federal Reserve, Anti-Defamation League, president of Cato, Koch Foundation, Jared Kushner, of course, Scooter Braun, Ezra Klein of the New York Times, Washington Post reporter, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, actor, Sophia Bush, and Elon Musk is named in there, Eric Schmidt, Peter Thiel, and others. Now, of course, this doesn't necessarily mean that they are quote unquote members. There are definitely people who may have just attended once or twice. And I also want to make it clear that going to one of these meetings doesn't inherently mean somebody is evil or done something wrong. As we know with groups like the Bilderberg, they try to invite people that they think will be interesting and will be appealing to growing their movement. And that's really how they hook people in, is they're just like, oh yeah, come be a part of, rub elbows with the presidents and the prime ministers and all the other fancy people. Don't you want to? Everybody wants to. And, they push people in that direction, even though people might not really understand the deeper agendas and what it's all about. Now, I want to talk about this for a second. Actually, let me go and pull back that last article real quick from Forbes, because there's an interesting note about Dialog here. This is, like I said, it was being revealed in new information, but it's actually been somewhat known, tangentially in other areas. Excuse me while I open up this article again. God dang it. Okay, so this one, Dialog, talks about a woman named Lisa Randall. So here's the interesting part. It says, an invitation to the 2014 Dialog retreat at Sundance Resort in Utah was published via the Epstein files. Here, we can open that up right there. After Harvard University physicist Lisa Randall forwarded her invitation to Jeffrey Epstein asking, is this worthwhile? And Jeffrey Epstein said, Sundance is nice, go. British financier Ian Osborne also forwarded his 2014 invitation to Epstein, which is why are people from Harvard and elsewhere going to Epstein and asking him hey, should I go to this meeting? Well, we're going to show you guys that in just a second. But two different people forwarded it to Epstein, said, hey, is it worth going? And Epstein said to the second one, same shit. Peter doesn't even attend. I will tell him that he should stop them using his name. So maybe Peter's not involved anymore, but he founded it. Who knows, according to that statement from Epstein. But this is what it's related to. Harvard professor Lisa Randall maintained years of contact with Epstein, flew on his jet. This is from February 2026. Harvard professor Lisa J. Randall of class of 84 maintained years of contact with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, exchanging emails and phone calls and flying on his private jet in 2014, according to new documents released. So it just goes into the whole thing here. we can find the same reference to the invitation, I think. Let me see. Invitation. No, maybe it doesn't mention it in this, but it just shows you that she had a relationship with Epstein, even beyond that. She flew on his plane. You can find her in the flight manifest and the flight logs right there. Lisa Randall and other people, Reid Hoffman, Jeffrey Epstein, and somebody with a redacted name. Curious, why would they still redact names? That's interesting. Maybe could be a victim, could just be bullshit, and they're still hiding things. So let's go ahead and look at that. Here's the email. Jeffrey Epstein responding to an invitation to Dialog 2014. So let's go back to the original email. The email coming from Jeffrey Epstein to Lisa Randall. This is him responding back to her. She said, Lisa Randall sent Epstein, is it worthwhile? He says, Sundance is nice, go. And then Jeffrey Epstein says, so you let me understand, you were suggesting tourism, but you can see here's the original invitation. Dear Lisa, you are invited to join us at Dialog 2014, a 2-day bipartisan retreat discussing how to change the world. There will be no speeches, just many moderated breakout discussions of 6 to 15 people on various topics, and we designed the agenda around your ideas and needs. Please let us know if you'd like to join us. Peter Thiel and Aaron Hoffman, he's the guy who founded it. Yes, we know Dialog is 16 months away, but we are giving you a chance to sign up now. And so there's more. Dialog participants aren't modest. We want to change the world, but we don't want to spend our time in being in a large audience listening to winded speeches. There are no speakers, no panels. All attendees participate in breakout facilitated discussions, and we limit the discussion to only 150 global leaders who can have an impact now and emerging leaders who can help implement the plans we develop. So again, another secret group meeting behind the scenes, trying to change the world. You could argue they're for the better. You could also argue it's totally bullshit. Now, just out of curiosity, they have a link here that I doubt is active anymore, but just out of curiosity, dialog2014.eventbrite. Is that going to be available? Okay, well, first of all, I copied it wrong. So let's go ahead and fix that. Dialog 2014. I highly doubt this page would be up, and I'm sure by now, if it was, somebody would have reported on it and found it if it's in the Epstein emails. No, it doesn't look like it's coming up. Nevertheless, this is just part of that whole network of secret people meeting in secret, quiet, behind the scenes, trying to change the world. You don't get a choice in it. They didn't ask you. Okay, Dialog participants, and they name some of the different people. Partial list of participants in the 2013, and we have somebody blanked out, which we could probably figure out. Pacific Investments, Mercado Libre, Susan, Byron, there's a bunch of different people named here who were participants. And so this is all intended to entice you. Like, look at these famous people, co-founder of Palantir, founder of TaskRabbit, Passport Capital, all these different really big names, big companies. Come join us. And Jeffrey Epstein, former CFO, Oracle. It says Jeff Epstein. This is probably a different one, but hey, it's kind of a interesting thing there. Niall Ferguson, others. Yeah, you can see the names of these people, and every single one of these people now should be questioned in public when the opportunity arrives. Ask them, what are you doing at Peter Thiel's? What do y'all talk about at Dialog, at Peter Thiel's secret meeting? You see these names, you see them in public events, confront them, ask them, question them. But there it is. It's listed in the Epstein files. Now, one of the first stories on this was from August 2025. So this is last year, by Axios. Dialog, a secretive forum, plans DC area campus. So apparently it says that they were planning a major expansion, including a real estate purchase to build a campus in the DC suburbs, according to a tipster familiar with the group's plans that told Axios. And then the interesting thing is that they keep getting compared to a tech era Bilderberg. Quietly became one of the most elite and mysterious gatherings for CEOs, intellectual officials, and elected officials and intellectual heavyweights. So it continues to go on. It says the decision to buy land, then build within commuting distance of the Capitol shows the group isn't just kissing President Trump's ring, but plans to be engaged in Washington long after his term is over. A source invited to Dialog said that, quote, amid rising demand for quieter reflection in an always-on world, Dialog bills itself as offering global elites the chance to talk candidly across digital lines, away from the phones and the pressures of social media. In secret. That's what that means. That means in secret. And so Larry Summers, Chamath Palihapitiya, Henry Kravis, as I said, Wes Moore, governor of Maryland, others. Some of these names have already been known and are coming out, but it's even more people coming out now. And then we have another report from Wired after the original one. Says how the Peter Thiel linked Dialog Club secretly ranks its members. Leaked files show the invite-only network grades members by their money and their fame, shaping who's out, who's in, who's out, and who pays. So Wired has learned that Dialog grades its event attendees on a hidden scale, ranking them from wealth and fame, tracking their relationships and using algorithms to decide who they should meet, who they should sit with, and who no longer belongs. They're basically probably asking an AI bot. The records are part of a trove of internal data received by Wired from a confidential source. So this is going even further than the original story, which was a combination of Wired's own reporting plus the hack from that hacker. This is them now getting a trove of internal data from a confidential source containing the name of nearly 200 prominent people scheduled to attend the group's retreat this summer. It includes home addresses, phone numbers, email accounts, dates of birth, photos and emergency contacts, food allergies, political leanings that have been volunteered by some members. These are distinct from a list of people affiliated with Dialog that was left exposed on the website and has been circulating since earlier the week. Like I said, that's separate from this hack. So the document describes Dialog as an invite-only community, distinguishes between two types of products, memberships and retreats. The former allows members, the group calls them dialoguers, to access private dinners hosted in members' homes and private spaces around the world. So you get to be a part of this secret society, and then you get access to like super secret dinners at each other's homes. And there's nothing illegal about that, of course, but we know that these are people who've got an agenda. They're plotting to take over the world, for heck's sake. I mean, they've got their own things going on, and of course they're going to meet in secret. And they've been doing it for 20 years while we're chasing around the Bilderberg, who's still very secretive, and Peter Thiel does go there as well. He's a steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group, which also tells you why this is so important, because Peter Thiel connects the two of them. Retreats convene more than 200 people. This August, for example, members' guests are scheduled to gather outside of Dublin for 2 days of discussion on artificial intelligence, geopolitics, modern warfare, NATO's future, and battlefield tech. And it's interesting, it says, disclosure, a former editor-in-chief of Wired, Nick Thompson, currently the CEO of The Atlantic, is among those in both the public list and the unreleased records. He declined to comment. So that's called real journalism and disclosing, potential conflicts of interest like that. Their ex-editor is in these files, and they didn't shy away from mentioning that. Also acknowledging that he is currently the editor of The Atlantic, which I think is important too, because they're still a big magazine, big publication. Dialog grades people before they join. Of the 192 dossiers examined by Wired, 130 are tagged as members. The rest are prospects with files bearing first-time dialoger or warm. Everybody receives a grade A, B, or C, and C seems to be for the most famous and influential. Only 1 in 7 received it. Most of them received a B. The final tier A appears primarily assigned to older established members whom the graders consider less notable. So interesting about that. Now let's go down here and see if they actually are going to show some of these names, if there's anything we haven't seen, and because that would be really important. Nope, they're not listing the names. They mentioned Josh Brolin up here. They said they've got names of people who are going to be coming into the Dublin one. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they should be putting that information publicly. But Josh Brolin, they mentioned, the economist Tyler Cowen, and that's basically it, in addition to the other list we have over on the other pages and some of this previously known information and what they're all about. But here we go. This is another secret society leaked out into the public, and now more information coming out. I'd never heard of this one before. I don't know a lot of people who had. So I think overall this is a positive story, that things are moving forward and that these kinds of things are getting leaked. And let me just speak to this for a moment before we move to our next story, because I remember you could probably find a video on theconsciousresistance.com from a couple years ago called Does Bilderberg Even Matter Anymore? And I was kind of at the time arguing that maybe they don't really matter anymore. Maybe we should be putting all of our energy into what we want to see in the world. And this is still my message. When I'm traveling for the activation tour, my main message has been Liberation 2030. Instead of Agenda 2030, Great Reset, what is your Liberation 2030? What are you trying to see in the world? Put time and energy into that. That's what matters more than just obsessing over they, them, those. Of course, as a journalist, I'm reporting on this. I'm sharing this information to you, but I'm not saying live in fear of these people, obsess over them. Yes, journalists and people should confront them and question them about this in public wherever they're at. But more than that, you should take understanding. Okay, the technocratic wannabe elite are organizing in secret for the last 20 years and this meeting and others, and they're planning out their future. What are you doing? Are you meeting in public? Because we don't need to hide in secret to do good work. Are you meeting in public with locals in your area, your family members, your church, whatever, and plotting what your 2030 agenda is, what your liberation 2030 is? Are you plotting how you want to change the world? Obviously, we don't have the billions of dollars and we're not the trillionaires, but that doesn't mean we don't have power and influence to shape in our local circles and our spheres of influence. We absolutely should be putting just as much time in that. So yes, on one hand, I don't know if the Bilderbergers and the dialogues matter so much. I think it's important and we expose them and people finally come to recognize, as I documented in my Pyramid of Power book and series, that power has been meeting quietly and secretly for decades, for a century now, and organizing world affairs. And despite people saying that's conspiracy, these are powerful people conspiring together to achieve their goals. We should take some awareness of that, have knowledge of that. And that should encourage us, I believe, to focus even more than ever on our own goals of what we're going to do for our family, for our friends, and our lives. And that's what I call Liberation 2030. And if you'd like to learn more about Liberation 2030, guys, I want to invite you to come to the activation tour. I'll be traveling the United States again in just a couple of weeks. I'm here in Mexico right now for just another 2 weeks. You can go to activationtour.org. activationtour.org. You'll see the schedule page here. Click that and it'll take you down here. I already did leg 1 of the tour. We did 3, 6, 9, 10 events. Now we're going to go for the second leg of the tour. We're going to do something like 21 or something ridiculous. So I'm super stoked. I'm going to be Houston, Austin, Dallas, Wichita, Columbia, Missouri, Twin Cities, Cleveland, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, Pittsburgh, New York City, Baltimore, Nashville, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia. And then in Florida, we're doing Orlando and Tampa Bay. I want to invite you guys to come to this. Go to activationtour.org, click on the schedule. The ones that are yellow, those are the details we've got worked out. We're still working out in New York City and Baltimore. Click on these events, guys. Come out, get connected with like-minded people in your community. This is your chance to hear me speak in person, which I tend to think is some of my better, most important work. But more importantly, to connect with like-minded people in your community who are also on this wavelength of trying to do something positive in the world, trying to spread individual liberty, mutual aid, empowerment, and really trying to build the better world that we know is possible. So if you want to come meet me, great. I'm going to be giving a brand new speech focused on exit and build strategy. I'm also going to be selling my books and shirts if you want to pick up those in person. And we're going to be doing networking, having this kind of community dialogue conversation. I'll also be performing my music. But most importantly, you have an opportunity to get plugged in and get connected to people in your community. This is specifically the United States, of course. But even if you're not on my tour schedule, just organize a meetup in your community. Instead of worrying about the dialogues and thinking that they're going to control everything or the Bilderberg groups, let's start meeting in our communities. Let's start planning. Let's start organizing. Let's start working on what our future looks like. Because if we don't, well, I think we know where things are going to go. So check it out all at activationtour.org. All right, our next main story is going to be focused on the fight against data centers. And now this is becoming such a big topic. I've been saying and kind of hinting at in past reports that I think this is one issue that seems like it can potentially unite left and right. And I think it's something we should probably take advantage of because, I'm not black-pilled and thinking that everything's hopeless, that we can't stop the technocracy completely. Of course, I'm focused on exiting and building outside of it. I'm not necessarily thinking, I do have my hesitations whether or not we can completely stop this AI technocratic fueled surveillance machine. And yet I do think it's important that we try where we can. And when it comes to data centers, when it comes to this issue, you've got people uniting from across the political spectrum. You've got right-wing conservative farmers who are concerned about their land and eminent domain and access to clean water. And then you've got left-leaning progressive climate change activists who are also concerned about different types of pollution related to data centers. You've got surveillance activists, privacy activists who are concerned about how data centers, hyperscale data centers specifically, are going to be the infrastructure that allows governments and private corporations to store all this massive amounts of data that they're collecting and then to use AI to analyze it to do God knows what with it against us. So it really is bringing people together from across the spectrum. And this report from Wired, it's a couple of weeks old, but I wanted to touch on it to make sure you guys saw it. It came out May 26th. U.S. law enforcement warns of anti-tech extremism as AI hatred grows. Americans stew over the looming risk of job-stealing AI in data centers in their backyard, and the feds are raising the alarm about a new category of threat, according to new documents obtained by Wired. So it says that the feds are looking out now for what they're calling anti-tech violent extremists. More than 1,000 pages of unpublished reports from the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, and fusion centers, which were obtained by Wired, show that a national sift taking place to surveil this new and horrifying category of people deemed an emerging threat. So basically, as I said, they're considering people who are anti-tech to be kind of new extremists. And now this is just picking up on a thread that's been happening with the Trump administration for a while. You guys might remember that with his National Security Presidential Memo 7, he called for the DOJ to target anyone who was, quote, anti-American, anti-Christian, or had anti-capitalist beliefs. And this is part of his whole thing of going against so-called Antifa. I think a lot of people are falling for the PSYOP and not realizing how these kind of tools are going to be used against all of us in the long term. And earlier this month, Trump's counterterrorism czar, Sebastian Gorka, released a public counterterrorism strategy claiming that left-wing extremists are one of the top 3 counterterrorism threats in the US. So this combined with new documents shows that they have a focus on anti-technology extremism, which adds an unreported category to already public designations under a presidency that has heavily invested in political and material capital in AI and data center proliferation. Look, I've been talking about this, how under the Trump administration, the big technocrats are winning. I mean, since the very beginning, when he had his inauguration, you saw the big technocrats from Facebook to OpenAI and others sitting on the front row, ready and willing, knowing that this president was going to benefit them in some ways. You've got the federal government and the FCC trying to remove local restrictions on where data centers can go and on restrictions on laws protecting people from the dangers of AI. They're clearly favoring the big technocrats. And so as people start to get opposed to this and resist this, now the government is starting to see us as potential terrorists. Among these new documents, Wired found a New York Intelligence and Counterterrorism Bureau report that warns of widespread upheaval in response to AI adoption. Of particular note is a novel term for what the Bureau purports to be an emerging extremism threat. So this term has never before been used, but they say it like this: the chaotic atmosphere that may result from emergent AI technology in the next 5 years may fuel large-scale protests that devolve into civil unrest and anti-tech violent extremist activity, especially in large suburban areas such as New York City. The term anti-tech violent extremism does not appear in any publicly available DHS or FBI domestic extremism reports or guides, and this represents a whole new group of wide-ranging ideologies under a single extremist category. So that's kind of new. And this is just a New York Intelligence and Counterterrorism Bureau, right? It's not the feds themselves. But these kind of reports, these kind of assessments, they get shared all around the country through the fusion centers, which were created after 9/11, as they talk about here. 80 fusion centers now pockmark the country and serve as go-betweens for the federal agencies and state and local law enforcement. This was part of the whole 9/11 propaganda, that the reason the terrorists attacked America is because our intelligence networks were too spread out and too thin. We didn't have close enough relationships. The US government didn't have close enough relationships. So we needed to be able to have better sharing and basically break down walls that have existed for generations in the United States to keep the federal government from becoming so strong and the states and locals from just becoming one massive blob of government. And so they also point out here that this New York Police Department intelligence assessment, it follows the department's collaboration with the FBI last year to monitor the signal chat of an activist group coordinating volunteers to go to immigration hearings. And also, according to documents obtained by The Guardian, the FBI surveilled activists as part of a broader investigation into so-called anarchist, violent extremist actors. So these kinds of threats are only growing, guys. And now if you oppose AI, you might be labeled a anti-tech violent extremist. So that's part one of this look that we're taking here. Now I want to take you to another one. Again, all these reports are going to be at the show notes at theconsciousresistance.com. This is coming from Ken Klippenstein's Substack. He is an independent journalist. Congress's CIA eyes AI data center critics. Congress has its own CIA, and it's sounding the alarm about anti-AI grievances. This was pretty interesting. I'd never seen anything about Congress having their own intelligence network, which is scary enough on its own in this story, but it also relates to AI. So it says, as rage about artificial intelligence and the data center powering it grows, Congress is taking notice, not with any legislation or with law, but by spying on public opposition. A newly created intelligence agency of the Congress, is warning that legislators are in danger from an angry public. It's called the U.S. Capitol Police Intelligence Services Bureau, which, by the way, was created after January 6th. And in parallel to the 18th member executive branch intelligence community laid out the warning in an internal intelligence report produced in April. So this is a couple months old, but it's just now being leaked. So the Capitol Police Intelligence Services Bureau and the executive branch intelligence community, they put together a report, and this is from April 20th. It says, the ISB has prepared the intelligence note to provide the U.S. Capitol Police and law enforcement personnel with information related to recent threats and attacks likely linked to grievances concerning data centers. So there's only one problem. The report admits that there's no evidence of any actual threat to Congress. The report says the U.S. Capitol Police is not investigating any data center motivated threats to members of Congress. So there's no actual threat. They're just kind of getting them all hyped up and probably trying to put fear in their mind. Like the public is going to get upset about data centers and we got to be prepared for those violent extremists. The report goes on to warn that artificial intelligence related policies introduced on the Hill and in local communities are likely to continue drawing opposition, increasing potential concerns for public officials. So it's basically just vaguely, broadly saying people are against AI. And as these policies continue to increase in government, there's going to be potential concerns for public officials. No actual threat, no kind of targeted threat. It's just a random assessment of like, yeah, this might be something you guys should worry about. The Congressional Intelligence Office that authored the report was formed in the aftermath of January 6th and justified to bring the congressional police force, quote, in line with federal intelligence agencies and thereby gain more access to the massive existing intelligence community. That would, I would say, if January 6th was a psyop or a false flag in some way, that would be part of the goals, is that you're able to grow the intelligence apparatus by telling people, you know, that because of January 6th, we need to have these extra powers, blah, 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 this and that, in order to, you know, protect the people and prevent this from happening again. So I would be very suspicious of that. So that's another report from Congress's own Internal Intelligence Bureau warning them that that AI grievances are on the rise and they should be concerned about it. Now, here's another one. This is from Gizmodo documenting a report from what's called Heat Map. And it says here, Americans have grown dramatically anti-data center in just a month, a survey finds. Recent survey shows a dramatic swing against new data center construction. You can see a sign here, people at the Capitol, no data centers. It's the state of Utah. And so here we go. It says, a new heat map pro poll shows a rapid shift in public opinion since last fall. Now, the document, so apparently it's kind of behind a paywall. So we'll just go back to this Gizmodo one here. And it says 71% of Americans would oppose a data center project built near their homes, including 55% that would strongly oppose it. This is a stark contrast from just 9 months ago when Heat Map first conducted the survey and found that Americans were evenly split on the subject, with 43% saying they would support the project and 42% voicing opposition. Even in the survey's second iteration just 3 months ago, only 51% said they would oppose a data center. So in a year, it went from 42% voicing opposition, 51%, and now 71%. This shows a dramatic change in public sentiment in a very short period of time. In just 9 months, the public swung 49 points against data centers, the report concludes. And this is, because of the various reasons that people are concerned with AI data centers. Now, it also says this, that although Heat Map said no U.S. region saw less than 69% of data center opposition, rural voters in the countryside were more particularly upset. Other communities that were particularly opposed to data center projects, according to the survey, were Democrats and young people. Among respondents aged 18 to 34, a whopping 80% said they would oppose a new data center near where they lived. The younger generation is growing less excited about AI and more angry instead, according to another survey from April. And this could be related to high freezes and layoffs and concerns about the environment and all kinds of other things. And people are still trying to push this real hard, like NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, who recently did an interview saying everybody just needs to adopt AI and try it out. Of course, Sam Altman with OpenAI pushing it in his own ways. So they're becoming a big issue, as this article talks about. Moratoriums are picking up. Maine was supposed to be the first state to adopt a moratorium, but the governor vetoed it, surprise, surprise. But it's showing that across the board, the public is increasingly against data centers. And this is not just showing up in polling. This is actually showing up in the headlines. Look at this one from a couple of weeks ago. LA area city sees first voter-approved measure to ban data centers. Voters in Monterey Park, California, 86% of them voted in favor of a measure in Tuesday's election to ban data centers. It calls for a prohibition on data centers citywide in order to, quote, protect air quality, drinking water resources, and public health, and, quote, prevent impacts to electricity and water rates. So they were going to be building a data center in Monterey Park, but it was withdrawn earlier this year after City Council adopted a moratorium. And now they're actually writing that into the law. And there's other examples. Wisconsin City passed a referendum targeting data center construction in April. Several state legislators are considering data center moratoriums. As I mentioned, Maine had passed the data center ban, but it was vetoed. The New York legislature also appears poised to pass a 1-year ban on data construction. So it's growing right there. And then also I'll point to my buddy Justin over in Florida, who's been doing great work for a long time on a number of issues. We've interviewed him several times over the years for his fluoride activism and 5G activism and geoengineering and other things. He's been just kicking ass when it comes to data centers. He says, we have at least 5 Florida communities voting on AI data centers this week. Please be there. So one of them, Zephyrless, is today at 6 p.m. Lake County, Hernando County, DeSoto County, Clay County. He's kicking butt out there. And by the way, Justin is going to be with me speaking briefly at data centers at the Orlando stop. That's where he's based at in Orlando, Florida. So people like him are out there doing this. People, activists in LA and elsewhere are doing this. But surprise, surprise, we now have new reports from the Energy and Commerce Committee. Chairman Guthrie, Joyce, and Latta request investigation of foreign adversaries' efforts to block American data center build out. Uh-oh, here we go. What are they claiming? Is this that whole anti-tech violent extremist thing? It says Congressman Brett Guthrie, chairman of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, Congressman John Joyce, chairman of the subcommittee, Congressman Bob Latta, they sent a letter to the co-chairs of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, which, by the way, that was, that's filled with technocrats. I've reported on that. And the FBI Director Kash Patel, requesting information about the evidence that strongly suggests that there are foreign influence campaigns working to slow American AI progress and block the development of the infrastructure we need to power it. Guys, before I go any further, let me just remind you, this is just, it's bringing I'm having deja vu here. Back in like 2018, 2019, when there was the race to 5G, which is still ongoing, they're trying to get to 6G now. The New York Times and other outlets wrote articles saying that if you are against 5G, you probably fell for Russian propaganda. And now we're seeing a similar thing, but instead of 5G, it's AI data centers. If you're against AI data centers, it's because there's a influence campaign by China happening. It couldn't be that people are just opposed to this information, opposed to this infrastructure on their own. No, they have to be influenced by some sort of foreign adversary, which, let's be honest, it could be true. The US and China and Russia, they have their own campaigns against each other's citizens and nations to spread their own propaganda. And it's also true that people are against data centers. So Chairman Guthrie says, quote, our nation is locked in a race with China to innovate and lead the world in the development of AI technologies. The fact that the Chinese Communist Party-backed entities and other foreign adversaries may be attempting to influence decisions related to American data center infrastructure puts into perspective how serious of a fight we are in. Americans deserve to know who is bankrolling the disinformation campaign that seeks to block critical infrastructure investments. Data centers are the foundational computing structure that makes modern life possible, from financial and medical records that underpin the economy and personal health care to the photos and emails on your phones. So much of what we take for granted in our daily digital lives relies on the data center infrastructure from across the country. Our adversaries in Beijing fundamentally understand this, and that's why our committee is working to address this critical issue. So they don't point to any actual evidence. They do say this: new investigations from the Bitcoin Policy Institute and Power the Future lay out how these foreign-linked influence campaigns are currently being waged. Now, I would want to investigate those institutions, these Power the Future and Bitcoin Policy Institute, and see who they're funding, because maybe they have their own reasons for pushing this idea. According to the BPI documents, how foreign state media, the CCP-aligned Singham network, and foreign billionaire funding are routed through U.S. nonprofits. PTF's report shows how billionaire donors filter cash through a financial web into America's nonprofit ecosystem to turn public opinion against data center build-out, using the same playbook environmental activists have run against needed energy projects for decades. This new information comes as states and localities continue to examine potential pauses and moratoriums on data center construction an effort that is backstopped by Senator Bernie Sanders' disastrous AI Data Center Moratorium Act. Throughout this Congress, we have worked to ensure American leadership in AI while supporting the power generation. The stakes couldn't be more higher. China already deploys next generation technologies to advance many of the regime's most sinister goals, focused on enhancing the power of its surveillance state, utilizing advanced computing. China is now attempting to undermine AI innovation, blah, blah. So that's kind of the point they're making. They're now saying that there's legitimate reasons and concerns to believe that China is trying to stop U.S. expansion of data centers, and that's what this is all about. You can see they shared this article. While Americans have legitimate concerns about the development of data centers, we cannot allow the Chinese Communist Party and its allies to shape the public debate in our communities. And they have an article here at the Daily Caller. And surprise, surprise, this was posted 5 days ago. It's got 1 like. Nobody pays attention to the Energy and House Committee Twitter account with 40,000 followers. They got 1 like. Ain't nobody buying this. That's hilarious. Then we also have this, OpenAI themselves, Sam Altman. Now, it's not like they have any bias, right? It's not like they have anything to gain by convincing people that only China wants people to be opposed to data centers, right? It couldn't just be that they're just trying to make their own money and advance their own agendas. But nevertheless, they put out a report called PRC-Linked Influence Operations Are Targeting AI Debates in the U.S. This is the People's Republic of China. And they have a report here. And it says, in our report, we described 2 clusters of ChatGPT accounts likely originating from China that we banned after they used our models in support of an apparent covert influence operations that promoted narratives in an attempt to manipulate a legitimate debate about American AI and wider tech policies. The first cluster generated social media comments and images claiming that the data center buildouts for AI were increasing electricity. We named this cluster Data Center Bandwagon. The second one generated comments and images criticizing U.S. tariffs and specified in their prompts that the content should not include China's leader Xi Jinping and the output instead only focus on Trump. So they're basically saying they found some people using AI to try to spread a pro-Chinese message. That may or may not be true. If it is true, that doesn't mean that that's kind of a big jump to claim that that sort of thing is influencing Americans when Americans themselves are just coming to grips with the concerns about AI data centers. And that's not to say that there's not false or even exaggerated information out there. As there tends to be with these big topics, people sometimes do believe things that aren't 100% factual, but there are legitimate concerns associated with data centers, as we've been outlining here. Now, OpenAI says, by publishing these findings, we aim to help our industry, government, civil society, and the public better identify and disrupt attempts by foreign threat actors to manipulate legitimate public debates, weaken democratic institutions, and advance totalitarianism with AI characteristics. The use of AI for surveillance, censorship, and control over political, social, and private life. Yes, that's what we're warning against. And it's not just the Chinese that are trying to do it. Unfortunately, it is also the Americans and the Western folks who are also pushing the same agendas. Now, they have the report. I'm not going to read through this whole report, but I will look at it later, because what I would say is sometimes these kind of things, we saw the same thing during Russiagate, and they'll say, well, there was an influence campaign and it was making images and sharing stuff on Twitter or social media. And then you look at it and it might have got very few likes. So for example, here they're showing, I guess this is one of the AI generated images here. And then you can show here, see if I can zoom in on this. They're showing that this post by, I guess, this chat bot, this AI generated bot, it says the power grid is under more strain and the risk of power outages accumulating. And then there's some links, right? Well, look, it shows one of them got 127 likes. The other one got 0 and was only seen 12 times. The other one maybe got seen 89,000 times, but it got only 127 likes. That's nothing in the bigger scheme of things. And thinking about how many people reach millions of people a day, a couple of images shared on Twitter, posting things like this. You know, it says here's a screenshot of a likely inauthentic X account falsely claiming ChatGPT user data was compromised. And you can see it does look like a bunch of copycat, but literally none of them have any likes. Seven views, 9 views, 5 views, and probably 5 of them were the researchers of this report. And so they're just showing, like, you know, like I said, social media account post and claiming this is some huge influence operation when these things don't even have any likes. This person that they're claiming, here's an X account linked to this operation with the post about ChatGPT data theft. Look, it has 0 followers since October 2025, 0 likes, 0 retweets. These are hardly influencing anybody, I'd say. Nevertheless, let's go on. We got more reports of this. The GOP embraces speculation about China's role in data center backlash. Republicans are embracing allegations that data center operation in the U.S. is being fueled by foreign actors, raising questions of how influence operators are contributing to one of the fiercest debates in the tech policy space. So reports, including one from OpenAI, recently emerged suggesting that China and other countries are carrying out influence campaigns. So like I was just saying, though, we looked at that report. There's nothing to it, but the headline sure does grab attention. And now it's going to kind of create this divide, because as I was saying a couple of moments ago, this issue has been one that has been uniting left and right, center, apolitical people, from people who are just all out against anything AI, anything data centers, and they just hate it all, to others who might support some use of AI but are concerned about the environmental impacts, and others who, same thing, might support some use of AI but are concerned about the surveillance issue related to that. And there's this sort of coalescing of a true nonpartisan, bipartisan, transpartisan movement. And what do they want to do? They want to try to turn it into no, if you are against data centers, if you believe this stuff, you're being funded by China. This is part of an influence campaign, and this is going to allow, like, your uncle, your mom, your dad, when you try to bring it up to them, especially the younger folks who say, Mom, I don't want you guys using AI. It's contributing to this problem. They're going to come back and say, no, I don't know about that, little Johnny. I just saw this new report that says that you've been influenced by China. You're just buying into Chinese propaganda, this and that. And this is already spreading on Twitter and elsewhere. Here's Justin again responding to this post from the Florida's Voice with Jordan Schachtel, who's just a whole shill. This guy, I think people started to like him during COVID, but he's a complete shill. And he's giving an interview, says, there's all kinds of weird stuff going on with the propaganda surrounding data centers, whether it's coming from Chinese funded groups or these astroturfed organizations based out of Silicon Valley. And Justin says, I'm just a regular Florida man that's been advocating for health and freedom in this state, and I'm fighting data centers just like anything that affects our health and privacy. What's weird is accusing regular people trying to preserve old Florida as victims of Chinese propaganda. Again, it absolutely could be true that China is trying to do influence campaigns, and I don't doubt it to a big degree. And at the same time, there is a huge reason people are opposed to this. One of those reasons is the cost. Now, Trump did, I think, do an executive order a couple of months ago claiming that they were going to pass laws or do something to try to prevent the average citizen from facing hike prices in their electric bill. But I don't think there's been any action on this. But this was reported just today as I'm recording this. House panel sets vote on data center grid bills. The legislation is part of the Energy and Commerce Committee's response to increased electricity demand and the data center construction blitz. The House committee will take steps this week to advance legislation that would make sure ratepayers don't foot the bill for data center expansion, along with measures to address the need to transmit more power across the country to meet rising demand. The Energy Subcommittee, chaired by Bob Leda, vote on a suite of bills, including the Bipartisan Ratepayer Protection Act, on Wednesday as part of an electricity policy-focused markup. So this is going to be codifying what I said, Donald Trump's ratepayer protection pledges, where they said that big tech companies will cover the cost themselves. And that might be the case, but that shouldn't convince people that this is a good thing, because the tech companies got billions of dollars. They can cover a little bit of extra cost if it saves you some money on your electric bill. That doesn't mean it's still not going to damage the environment in other ways. That doesn't mean that it's still not going to contribute to surveillance and all kinds of different things like that. We have to find ways to oppose this, and whatever your agenda is, whether it's surveillance, it's health, it's eminent domain, it's environmental, it's water concerns, we should stand against it, whether it's because you're worried about rising electric bills. But even if they do this, even if they do pass the bills and the billionaires and the big tech companies promise they're going to make sure you don't pay extra in your electric bill, that doesn't mean it won't impact you in other ways. And that's important to remember. Now, this brings me to my final point in this story, that I asked this a couple of weeks ago on social media at the beginning of June. I said, if I worked with my network of activists and journalists from around the US to organize a nonpartisan day of action / protest and educational events relating to dangers posed by AI data centers, would you organize in your community? I got about 80 something comments, 161 likes. I post this on all social media, and I'm asking you guys this question right now. In fact, I want to hear you in the comments as you're watching this. If I organize this, which I am, will you organize? I don't mean, I get some of you are like, oh, Derrick, I'm not a protester. I'm not an activist. I'd never organize. That's great. Well, now's the time. This is your time to learn, because we need everybody, all hands on deck, standing up against AI and data centers and surveillance and the technocratic state. This is one of the important issues to do so for the coming 7 generations and beyond. We have to stand up. We have to protect the planet. We have to protect our liberty and our privacy at all costs. So I'm not going to announce the date yet. We're going to have a big announcement coming soon. Actually, you know what? Let me just tell it to you guys, since this is my show. You guys will be the first to know. It's going to be Saturday, August 1st. Saturday, August 1st. And we're going to be announcing with a big website soon. There's going to be a map where you can put your own local action, your own protest. I want it to be protests, marches, rallies. I want it to be teach-ins, educational events. Get to the streets, talk to people, spread awareness. That's what this is all about. Let's see how we can do this. And so this is late June. I'm recording this right now. When we announce, probably early July, that'll give people 30 days to plan. Even if you've never done this before, guys, let's see if we can do this. My goal is to use all of my reach from independent media, from Redacted and Kim Iverson and Jimmy Dore, and James Corbett and others, try to get on as many podcasts as possible, talk about this, spread awareness, try to get as many aligned organizations and individuals and outlets, including the Independent Media Alliance, to support this and push it. And let's see if we can create a national day of action. There's already lots of protests. There's voting going on for moratoriums and bans. But what if we brought together all of our energy on one single day on an issue that seems to be uniting left and right, and we put the bullshit aside and we came together for this big issue and see where things can go from there? That's my goal. So it's going to be Saturday, August 1st. You're hearing it first, but you will hear more information about this. I will be putting out videos and making more announcement as it gets closer. So thank you to everybody who is following me on social media and who wants to, who comments on things like this. For those of you who just watch on YouTube, or if you're just listening to the audio, you're getting my content as far as my reports, my interviews, my podcast. But if you want a little bit more of behind the scenes, my personal thoughts, that is one benefit of following me on social media, whether Twitter, Telegram, even the YouTube community page, even the Substack notes. I post personal notes there, or Facebook if you must. Now, before we get to our final story, guys, I want to let you know that one of the best ways to support the Conscious Resistance is to buy t-shirts. We have 8 designs on our website, 8 designs, including Liberate All Life, Revolution Without a Healing is a Recipe for Disaster, You Are a Creator, Exit and Build, You Are Beautiful, You Are Powerful, You Are Free, The Conscious Resistance, No Masters, No Slaves, Holistic Anarchism. And I'm going to be making one soon for the airport that says facial recognition is optional for you to wear just at the airport. All the shirts are $25 USD. We do ship outside the US. It's sometimes a challenge, but we can make it happen. And also, if you want to support, you can buy my books via the website. All the books that are on my shelf behind me, the Conscious Resistance Trilogy, my memoir, A Man of My Word, The Pyramid of Power, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. The Conscious Resistance Trilogy collects my first 3 books, Reflections on Anarchy and Spirituality, Finding Freedom in an Age of Confusion, Manifesto of the Free Humans. And then you can also go back even further and find my book, The Holistic Self-Assessment. So check them out at The Conscious Resistance. You can see our shop for books and shirts if you want to support what we're doing, guys. And this brings me to my final story of the night. Now, you guys, if you've been following me since last summer, you know that I've been reporting on Mexico's evolving situation, where last summer there were some bills passed. There was several bills, telecommunications bills, claiming that on July 1st, 2026, all Mexicans, people with phones within the country, are going to have their phone lines registered with their CURP. And the CURP in Mexico is like a social security number card. It's been around since 1996. And it is a set of numbers. It also now in recent years has become biometric. So when people sign up for the CURP, or let's say you're a foreigner and you want to get residency, temporary or permanent, they take your fingerprints, they do a face scan, and that is registered with your different documents. And so the CURP is part of that. And this bill that passed in Mexico in 2026 or 2025 claimed that they were trying to put an end to kidnappings, to extortion, where the cartel and other criminals will kidnap people using anonymous cell phones, because you can just walk into, prior to this law, you can just walk into any local gas station. You can buy a SIM card. You don't have to show your ID. You don't have to put a name to it. Put that in a phone, and you've got an anonymous SIM. And so people were using this to commit crimes, surely. And that's what they claim. And they say, to stop this, we're going to force hundreds of millions of people to scan their faces and connect their face and their biometrics to their phone line. And everybody who has a phone has to have that connected. Now, of course, we know criminals aren't going to register, so it's not really going to address that problem. And it just ends up becoming a way to target and to focus on the population, the domestic population. So I've been following this since last year and kind of reporting on all the different developments. And here we are now, June 22nd. We are, I think, 8 days away from this. It starts on July 1st. So yeah, that would be next Wednesday, July 1st, allegedly. But as I've also been reporting, the numbers have been less than what the government might have hoped for and what the corporations might have hoped for. And so I've seen reports as low as saying that only 10% of the country has signed up. Others saying 20%. I think the highest I've seen is 31%. And now more recently, they're claiming up to 50%. And I'm just showing you, there's some reports going back months. This is in February, Kurt Biometrica, more control. Then we have this one. This is coming out just today. Last May. It says Mexicans say no to registration. The countdown continues. Out of the 158 million active cell phone lines, only 49.5 have been registered with the CURP. That is just 31%. 1 month before the deadline expires, millions of Mexicans refuse to hand over their personal data. And this is a report by this journalist, Carmen, Carmen Sanchez, and she goes and interviews Mexicans in Mexico City. You can find that one there. Again, all of these are in the show notes. Now, this is just today, June 22nd, countdown to registration. Days before the deadline to link phone lines with CURP, less than 50% has complied. Distrust over the use of personal data is stalling the process despite efforts to combat crimes like extortion. You got another report there. Then we got this one here. These are all, the majority of these are all brand new that I'm opening up here and sharing with you. And I will have a brand new investigation collecting all this information, written article for The Last American Vagabond coming later this week. So you can stay tuned to that. But what I'm showing you guys right now is just kind of a little bit of preview of what I'm going to write about and how 8 days before the deadline, the news is still reporting that people are saying no. They're going and they're interviewing people in the streets, and the people are saying, I'm not going to comply with this. Millions of phone lines at risk. 8 days before the deadline to register phone lines in Mexico, more than half the users still haven't completed the process. Jose Flores, spokesperson for the Network in Defense of Digital Rights, also known as RED, tells us all about it. And so they do an interview with Jose Flores here, and they're basically just saying the same thing. People don't want to comply, and they're not going to play the game. You got another report here. This is coming 4 hours ago. No extension for cell phone registration. Officials warn of millions of numbers being cut off. So they're claiming they're not going to stop it, despite some people wondering if it is going to happen or not, if it is going to stop. But you can see this. These reports are coming all over. Obligatory registration of cell phones and CURP. And, so it's coming up. It's coming up very quickly, and people are not going to register. Look, we got some comments here. No al registro. No to registration. We are firm in not registering. We're 100 million. They should put signal blockers in the prisons and do the reviews of the telephone registry and biometric CURP. Because that's the thing, people are saying, well, the prisoners have phones as well, and they're using them in prisons to commit crimes. They clearly could stop that if they wanted to. You have another journalist here, Irene Levy. She says in her new report, she says there will be an extension in the mobile lines registry. My column for today. This is her new column for El Universal, and this is her article here. I did find it, and here it is right here. And we can translate it real quick. It says, again, there will be registration for the mobile phone. There will be an extension for the registration of mobile lines. And she says here, the deadline of June 30th is 1 week away, and there will be an extension. The president herself let it glimpse in the morning of June 18th. She said that next Thursday they will report, that they will wait to see how the record progresses. And above all, we don't want to affect the people. Not half of the 144 million lines have been recorded. So basically they're saying that, like, she's saying they're not going to disconnect all these lines in the middle of the World Cup. Soccer is huge in Mexico. They're not going to disconnect hundreds of, 50 plus million people from the phone lines. And she's saying this based on a video interview that Claudia Sheinbaum, the Mexican president, did last week, where she apparently made that reference and said, we don't want to affect people. We're not trying to harm them. You can see this is from her daily press conference, más de la mitad de líneas telefónicos. So they're basically, asking her about the phone lines. Over half the phone lines registered with 12 days until deadline, and she gets asked and says she doesn't want to harm people. So we'll see, guys. I mean, this is coming up. Like I said, I'm going to have a brand new report on this. I don't know. Will they really cut the phone lines? We're about to find out. But I want to make it clear that even if you're not in Mexico, or somebody's like, oh, well, Mexico's not my country, that's not where I live, that's not where I'm from, whatever. what's happening in Mexico is an example of what could happen in other places if people don't comply. I don't think it's going to go through. I think they are going to back down, and it might be at the last minute they decide, okay, we're going to do an extension. As this lady is saying, they're going to do an extension for 120 days. We'll see if that happens. This is the third time Mexico has tried this over the last 10 years, and it keeps failing because people don't want to comply. Not only that, because Mexico doesn't really have the infrastructure to do it. That doesn't mean they won't keep trying, but two things to take away. For one, if you are part of those people out there who've been hearing about this story, and I've had so many people send me articles related to the biometric curve, like, Derrick, Mexico has digital ID, or did you know Mexico has digital ID? Or like, oh, I thought Mexico was more freedom-minded, or just whatever. And people conflate this biometric program, which is not good, as being a digital ID. It's not a digital ID, even if it does go through. Like, you don't have to carry a digital ID to go around Mexico to buy anything, to get on a bus line, to do any of that kind of stuff. Now, the CURP, if you're going to be in the system, the CURP is needed for paying for certain things. But if you're like me, and I am here in Mexico as a guest, as a tourist, I don't get the residency. I don't get the temporary or permanent residency. I'm not interested in becoming a citizen. Some people do that route. But if you do that, you're going to be forced to comply with the biometrics. So I don't want to do that as long as I don't have to. And I'm just, I'm playing my own path. But it is not a digital ID. And so many people on social media who don't know shit about Mexico were just reporting, Mexico's got a digital ID, Mexico biometrics. And the whole time I've been saying, just wait and see. Mexico's not like other countries. Mexicans don't necessarily just blindly comply, although a lot of people did during COVID, just like everywhere else in the world. And so you can't just assume because a law is passed that the government says something that it's actually going to play out that way in reality. That's not really how Mexico always works. People often just kind of do their own thing and they don't care or pay attention to what the government says. Now, a lot of people will follow what the government says, of course, but not everybody. So just want to make that clear. And then the other thing is, take this as a lesson that if the people don't comply, you can stop bad policies. At least you can slow them down. Who knows if it'll last forever, but you can slow them down. So I hope you guys take note of that whenever you see these kinds of policies rolling out in your own countries, wherever you're at, including all of my friends in the United States, guys. So that's going to do it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We covered Peter Thiel's Secret Society Dialogue. We talked about the AI data center fight, and while they're telling you it's all Chinese propaganda, we are talking about Mexico's biometric CURP deadline. I've got so much more to report on very soon. I am only doing the Conscious Resistance Live, this show, once a month now. So you'll see me probably late July because I'm getting ready to go on tour, as I mentioned, activationtour.org. I'm going to be here in Mexico for a couple more weeks. The tour kicks off July 10th. So there's a chance I might do an early July show, but more likely it'll be a late July show. And then we'll pick things back up in August, and I'll continue to do my investigative reporting. I've got some big explosive stories coming up very soon relating to the Utah ritual abuse scandal that I'm going to tell you guys about so much more soon. But for now, stay tuned for my new article on the biometric CURP coming this week on thelastAmericanVagabond.com. By the way, if you're a paid subscriber on Substack or Buy Me a Coffee at $10 or more, I've started doing a live stream every Sunday. We've done 2 of them now, Sunday at 5 p.m. U.S. Central. If you're on my Substack and you're a paid subscriber, if you're on my Buy Me a Coffee at $10 or more, look out for the notifications. I've been posting them every week. There's a special link you get to join. It's super casual, super chill. We just talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, whatever's on my mind. And it's been fun so far. We've done 2 of them. So stay tuned for that this coming Sunday. And I will try to continue doing that even when I'm on tour on the road, although it might be a little more difficult. But yeah, so if you want to support me, guys, the best place to do so is always going to be at theconsciousresistance.com/invest. theconsciousresistance.com/invest, because this links you to my PO box, Buy Me a Coffee, Substack, for those who want to support via crypto, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, XMR. I also do have a Zano address I need to add on there. That's one way, theconsciousresistance.com/invest. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, you can buy books, you can buy shirts. That's a good way to support me. And if you can't spend any funds, because I get it, times are hard, the best thing you can do then is to bookmark and sign up for my email list at theconsciousresistance.com. Tell your friends and your family if they're looking for quality content that's not just clickbait, that's not influencer drama about what's Candace talking about this week or what's Tucker talking about, but actual investigative reporting. Tell them to visit theconsciousresistance.com, and you guys can get all of my content there. And greatly appreciate all of you guys. By the way, if you heard the song I played at the beginning, which I'm going to play a little bit here for a second at the end, it is from a band called Era, ERRA, and the song's called Cure. They're an awesome, like metalcore, heavy melodic band. I love them. They're great. I know not all of you will dig them, but enjoy a little bit more of that. Until next time, guys, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.